So if it's okay with the board, just given the crowd that we have this evening, I was wondering if it would be okay with you if we did things a little bit differently tonight, in that perhaps, so I've given now about 7 presentations on our bond project, 35 slides, and rather than giving that same presentation again, which is available 7 different times on our website for anyone in the community to view, and I would encourage you to visit those presentations because the questions sometimes are different. But if it's okay with you, I'm happy to deliver the same presentation that I've been delivering. But I was also, in lieu of that, I was thinking about addressing the 5 big questions that I've received from the community, because there are questions that have come up in many of the presentations, and I thought maybe this is the opportunity to, where this is the last meeting that will be posted to our website prior to the bond vote. We do have another meeting on the 12th, but I just don't know if that will be up in time for the polls opening at 7 a.m. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to address the 5 most prominent questions that have been delivered to me and to members of my team. So if that's okay with you.
Yeah, is it possible when you get to this part of the meeting in the video, there could just be a link to the presentation? Anybody who came here expecting to see it, they could just click on a link and be taken to another presentation, and then you go on with your questions?
You should have asked Jen that before she left.
Well, we've got Brian here.
Yeah, Brian, that's his
And the answer to that's yes.
Yeah.
Put the link in the comments below the video, but you can't click on video to get a link.
Right.
No, but even if it just has the,
A heading that reads, click on the comment below
Right.
for
Yeah.
one of the presentations.
does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So the most common question that I have received throughout this entire process is, why not French Hill? We have a building idled. It's sitting there. It's available for use. Why would we not just occupy French Hill and use that for an additional school building? And there are so many facets to that conversation, but ultimately all roads lead to it being most fiscally responsible, and I would argue educationally responsible, to expand upon our existing buildings rather than to open up French Hill. When we look at the upfront costs, anyone who has been following the presentations has heard me say that the cost of new construction and the cost of renovations are comparable. Yes, we are using French Hill for our pre-K program, but please understand, our pre-K program does not come with the technology demands that our regular instructional program has. In fact, there are no devices in our pre-K program, and the Wi-Fi is only limited to the office space. So the technology infrastructure is not there. There's no food service program right now in our pre-K program. So the kitchen, the servery, all of the considerations that we would have in operating a school were not a consideration in reopening French Hill for our pre-K program. The infrastructure with regard to the bus loops is not something that was updated. So we don't have transportation at French Hill for our pre-K program, so that would make sense that we have not made that investment to upgrade the facility. From that regard, we don't have school buses going through the facility, unless it's a small amount for drop-off and pick-up at some of the daycare providers that are housed there. The other part is we do have a lot of community resources housed at French Hill that would be displaced, whether it's YAC, whether it's a YAC wrestling program, Alliance for Safe Kids Ask program, the music school, Children's Corner, and our pre-K program, and 1010 Recreation are all housed within that complex, in addition to a teacher center. With regard to the other part of that conversation, which is the recurring costs, if we were to open French Hill, we would need a principal, an assistant principal, 2 office staff, a nurse, an assistant in the nurse's office, 2 daytime custodians, 2 evening custodians, psychologist, social worker, SRO, outdoor security, indoor security, and we haven't put 1 classroom teacher in that building yet. So with all of the staffing needs to make that building commensurate with our other schools and the additional bus run that we would need, we anticipate that those annual recurring expenses would be about $3 million. If we build on Mohansick, Brookside, and Crampon, which is part of our plan, we already have a principal. We have great principals. We have great assistant principals, great clinicians, great staff in the buildings, great SROs, great security personnel. We may have to add another cleaner in each of the schools to account for the new wings that are being added, but that's a far cry from the $3 million annual recurring costs that we would anticipate in reopening French Hill. And then who goes to French Hill? That's the other conversation that really hasn't been had. Do we reconfigure our grade levels? Do we redraw the lines? Those are all educational considerations that would be very disruptive to our students. So the thought of opening French Hill really doesn't make sense educationally. It doesn't make sense fiscally. And that's where the steering committee and certainly our administrative team arrived, and the board as a whole arrived at the conclusion to add on to our existing buildings. With regard to the second question that I've received is, Prop 1 has no tax impact. Do I have to vote on that? I actually got that question this evening because there's an implication that because there isn't a tax increase, it does not need to be voted upon. That's not accurate. Each proposition is separate, and both propositions have to be voted upon. That question has come up at every single presentation that I have delivered on this topic. The other part of that question is, well, if I vote yes for Prop 2, does that not automatically imply that I'm supportive of Prop 1? And that's not the way the law works. Any voter who is going to come out on February 13th, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at French Hill will need to cast their vote for both propositions. If Proposition 1 passes, and only if Proposition 1 passes, then the results for Proposition 2 can be considered. So Proposition 2 cannot pass unless Proposition 1 passes, and both votes, although they'll be on the same ballot, the vote to each proposition has to be cast. The third question is, well, what's the tax impact? That has come up often as well. And on Proposition 1, our fiscal advisors were here at our last Board of Education meeting in January, and they were very clear in saying that Proposition 1 would have no added tax impact. Proposition 2, on a home that's at the average assessed home value in Yorktown, which is $10,150, the home at the average assessed value would experience a $78 increase annually, or approximately $6.50 each month. So if your home has an assessment, and I'm not suggesting your taxes are $10,150, it's the assessed value of your home. If your home is assessed at a lesser value, then the anticipated amount of the tax increase for Proposition 2 would be less. Obviously, if it's assessed higher than $10,150, it would be higher than $78. That chart that indicates some of the more commonly assessed home values in our town is posted to our website as part of the presentation that I've delivered previously. The last two questions, well, I'll take them in order. The first is timeline. Why is it taking so long? Why will this project take 5 years to complete? Well, in fact, it's going to take more than 5 years to complete, because the fifth question, which is what's next? What happens if the bond, or when the bond passes on February 3rd, if the bond passes on February 13th? Well, what happens is we go into a 12-month design period where we'll engage faculty and staff and students to hear about their experience, their hopes and vision for the facilities that we have here in Yorktown that are part of the bond. We acknowledge that not every want, need will be addressed in this bond. When we first went at the bond, the budget was over $60 million, which is something that would have resulted in a tax increase in Proposition 1, and that we heard very loudly from the community was not something that they would consider. So we pared down the project, we created a second proposition. Ultimately, Proposition 1 would fall into a range that allows it to be tax neutral. But what's next is a 12-month design period followed by a 6-month review period that takes us to the spring of 2025, when we would begin construction after a bid process. With regard to why so long, and that's the final question that I'll address this evening, unless, of course, the board has questions that they'd like to have addressed. The why so long part comes down to 3 factors. First of all, in order to make this tax neutral, we have to borrow on a schedule that replaces existing debt. So we need to do that in a way that captures the debt that's retiring so that we can keep our increase below that level of tax neutrality. So there's only so much money we can borrow at a given amount of time. That's one factor. The second factor is the nature of the work being done is such that it would be disruptive in some instances to school. Remember, we're a school. From September to June, we have children here, and our mission is to educate and instruct. The gut renovations that are happening to some of the facilities cannot be done when school's in session. There's no way we can have a second shift of workers come in, rip apart a classroom, and ask them to put it back together for first period tomorrow morning. So some of the work is such that we have to wait until the summer months. You've only get one summer month period in any given year. So that window is finite each year to get some of the big work done. Some of the work can commence while school's in session. Generator, athletic fields, some of the more minor construction pieces that we're looking at, locker replacement even. So some of the things can get done, but there are elements and many elements of the bond project that cannot get done during the course of the school year because our number one mission here and our number one charge is to educate the children before us. And we have September to June to do that. So those are the 5 big questions. Why not French Hill? How is the voting mechanism for Prop 1, Prop 2? What is the tax impact? Timeline, why is it so long? And what's next? After you get an approved bond vote, what happens next? So I hope that I've adequately addressed those questions to the community. I'm sure these will be posted to our website for the review of the community. And if there are any additional questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Is there anything else you want to address?
No, but I think it would be helpful if next time you sang it and put it into a musical, maybe with a dog costume on.
I think he needs the Brookside kids to come behind him as a chorus.
No, thank you for answering those
You guys
questions.
good?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
I'm good. Pete, Catalina? All right. The only one comment I want to make, and one thing we're very lucky of with our construction managers, is they don't allow any kind of construction to start. Like, we'll have the bids in this winter, but they will not allow any kind of demolition of anything until they know all the pieces to put it back together on site. So if there were any delays in getting that, that could delay our timeline, but they will not take apart something unless they have the items to put it back together again. They've been very good with that. And that's why we haven't had to delay openings of school. So I think you answered most of the questions, so I think we're good. Thank you.